The blue glow of computer screens filled the control room of Cerberus Station. The small outpost hung in the cold darkness beyond Neptune, far from the warm lights of Earth. For 50 years, humans had traveled between the stars, but they had stayed quiet. They listened to space but never spoke back. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison walked between the rows of workstations. His team worked the night shift, their eyes fixed on screens showing radio waves from deep space. Most nights brought nothing but silence. Tonight felt different. "Sir, I'm getting something strange," called out Petty Officer Danny Wake from his station. "This signal is not like anything we've seen before." Jake moved quickly to Danny's workstation. The screen showed wave patterns that danced and twisted, in ways that human technology had never created. The signal was weak but steady, coming from somewhere far beyond their solar system. "How long has it been transmitting?" Jake asked. "About 10 minutes now," Danny replied. "And sir, it's not random. There's a pattern here. This looks like language." Dr. Lisa Grant looked up from her desk across the room. She was the station's language expert, a woman who could speak 12 human languages and understand the basic structure of communication itself. "Bring it to my station," she said. "Let me hear what we're dealing with." The next hour passed slowly as Lisa worked with the signal. She ran it through every program they had, looking for patterns that might mean something. Jake stood behind her chair, watching numbers and symbols fill her screen. Captain Richard Stone emerged from his office, drawn by the unusual activity. He was a tall man with gray hair who had commanded Cerberus Station for 8 years. In all that time, they had never received a signal like this. "What do we have?" Stone asked. "It's definitely alien," Lisa said without looking away from her screen. "The mathematical base is different from ours, but I'm starting to see the structure. Give me another hour and I think I can decode at least part of it." Jake felt his heart beat faster. First contact. After decades of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, the answer was coming through their computers right now. 2 hours later, Lisa called everyone to gather around her station. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly as she pointed to the translated text on her screen. "It's a distress call," she said quietly, "from a species called the Cathara. Their world is under attack by something called the hegemony." The room fell silent. Jake read the words on the screen, his mind trying to process what they meant. "They're dying," Lisa continued. "The message says their cities are burning. Their ships are destroyed. They sent this message to anyone who might hear it, hoping someone would remember them after they're gone." Captain Stone leaned closer to the screen. "What else does it say?" Lisa touched a few keys, and more text appeared. "They've been listening to our radio signals for decades. They know about Earth, about humans. The message includes star charts, showing the location of their world and detailed information about the enemy that's attacking them." "Why send it to us?" Jake asked. "If they think we're primitive, why tell us about their war?" "Because they're desperate," Lisa said. "And because they hope that someday, someone might make the hegemony pay for what they've done." Danny's voice cut through the quiet. "Sir, I'm detecting new signals. Multiple sources, moving fast, heading toward the outer system." Captain Stone moved to Danny's station and looked at the sensor readings. His face grew hard as he understood what he was seeing. "How long until they reach us?" Stone asked. "At current speed, about 3 weeks," Danny replied. Jake felt cold fear settle in his stomach. The hegemony heard the signal too. "They're coming to find out who received it." Lisa nodded grimly. "The Cathara message contains a warning about them. The hegemony doesn't allow other species to exist independently. They conquer everything they find." Captain Stone straightened his shoulders and looked around the room at his crew. These men and women had served together for years, monitoring space for threats to Earth. Now the biggest threat in galactic history was racing toward their world. Send an emergency message to Earth Command, Stone ordered. Full priority. Tell them we have first contact and we have incoming hostiles. As Danny worked to prepare the message, Lisa continued reading through the alien transmission. Her face grew more troubled with each line she translated. "Captain," she said, "there's more. The Cathara have been studying us through our radio and television signals. They think humans are a young species that hasn't left their home system yet. They have no idea what we're really capable of." Jake looked at the readings showing the approaching enemy ships. "Maybe that's good. If they underestimate us, we might have a chance." Captain Stone activated the station's intercom system. His voice echoed through every compartment of Cerberus Station as he spoke to the entire crew. "This is the captain. All personnel are to consider this station on full alert status. We have made contact with an alien species, and we have confirmed the existence of a hostile alien empire. In 3 weeks, enemy scouts will reach our system. We will monitor their approach and gather intelligence for Earth Command." He paused, then continued. 50 years ago, humanity decided to listen to the galaxy before announcing our presence. Today, that decision may have saved our species. We know our enemy is coming, and we know they don't expect us to fight back. Make no mistake. People, we are at war. The control room buzzed with activity as the crew began preparing for the long weeks ahead. Jake returned to his station and looked at the star charts the Cathara had sent. Somewhere out there, an entire species had died calling for help. Their message had reached Earth, and now Earth would have to decide what to do about it. The sleeping giant was beginning to wake up. The emergency message from Cerberus Station reached Earth in less than 4 hours through the quantum communication network. Within minutes of receiving the transmission, alarms sounded in military bases across the planet. The message was simple, but terrifying. Aliens existed, they were hostile, and they were coming to Earth. President Helen Carter sat in the underground bunker beneath Colorado Springs, staring at the translated alien message on her tablet. Around the massive conference table, the world's most powerful military leaders waited for her to speak. The Global Defense Council had been created decades ago to handle threats from space, but no one had truly believed they would ever need to use it. "How certain are we about this threat?" President Carter asked. Admiral Jack Collins of the Space Defense Force stood up and activated the large display screen at the front of the room. Images of the alien star charts appeared, along with technical data about the enemy ships heading toward Earth. "The evidence is solid, Madam President," Admiral Collins said. "Our deep space sensors confirm multiple objects moving at high speed toward the outer solar system. Based on the alien data, these are scout ships from something called the Hegemony." General Frank Turner, commander of Earth's ground forces, leaned forward in his chair. "What do we know about this hegemony?" Dr. Peter Hayes, Earth's leading expert on alien life, opened his folder and began reading from his notes. According to the Cathara transmission, the hegemony is an empire that has conquered most of the galaxy. They've destroyed thousands of worlds and enslaved millions of different species. "How is that possible?" asked General Turner. "No single government could control that much territory." Dr. Hayes looked up from his notes. "Because every species they've conquered has been weak by our standards. The data shows that all of their victims came from low-gravity worlds with mild climates. They've never fought anyone like us." President Carter frowned. "What do you mean by that?" "Earth is what galactic scientists would call a death world," Dr. Hayes explained. "Most planets that support life are gentle places. Low gravity, stable weather, few natural disasters. Earth is the opposite. High gravity, extreme weather, earthquakes, hurricanes, ice ages, and predators that hunt other predators." Admiral Collins nodded. "The doctor is right. Look at the physical data from the Cathara message. Their average individual weighs about 60 pounds and comes from a world with half Earth's gravity. The hegemony species are similar. They're all small, weak, and slow by human standards. Are you saying we're stronger than they are? President Carter asked. Much stronger, Dr. Hayes replied. Human reaction time is about twice as fast as any species in the hegemony database. Our pain tolerance is off the charts. We can survive injuries that would kill most galactic species instantly. And we're the only species mentioned in their records that evolved from persistence hunters. General Turner looked confused. Persistence hunters. Humans evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, Dr. Hayes explained. No other intelligent species has that background. Most evolved from prey animals that hid from predators. We are the predators. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. President Carter looked around the table at her advisors. So you're telling me that we're naturally better fighters than anything the hegemony has ever faced? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Dr. Hayes said. But there's more. The hegemony's battle tactics are designed to break the will of their enemies quickly. They rely on overwhelming force against opponents who surrender rather than fight. To the death, humans don't surrender easily. Admiral Collins activated another display showing Earth's military capabilities. We have 350 combat ships currently in service, with another 100 under construction. Our weapons are designed to work in Earth's harsh environment, which makes them more powerful than anything shown in the alien database. How long do we have? President Carter asked. The enemy scouts will reach the outer system in 3 weeks, Admiral Collins replied. But we don't have to wait for them to come to us. Our fastest ships can intercept them near Pluto. General Turner stood up and walked to the display screen. I recommend immediate mobilization of all military forces. We should also begin evacuation of civilian populations from major cities. No, President Carter said firmly. If we start evacuating cities, we'll create panic. And based on what we've learned about human advantages, panic might be the only thing that could make us lose this war. Dr. Hayes nodded in agreement. The President is right. Human psychology is another advantage we have. Most species experience paralyzing fear when faced with overwhelming odds. Humans get angry and fight harder. Admiral Collins brought up another display showing the solar system's defenses. We have orbital weapons platforms around Earth and Mars. The asteroid belt mining stations can be converted to military bases. And our lunar shipyards can work around the clock to build more ships. What about the other nations? Asked General Turner. Will they support a unified defense? President Carter smiled grimly. I've already spoken with the leaders of China, Russia, and the European Union. For the first time in human history, we have a common enemy that threatens all of us equally. Every nation with space capability is mobilizing their fleets. There's something else, Dr. Hayes said quietly. The Cathara message included a list of species the hegemony has completely exterminated. 47 different civilizations wiped out because they were considered too aggressive to enslave. The room grew silent again. President Carter felt anger building in her chest as she thought about entire worlds of thinking beings murdered simply for refusing to submit. They made a mistake, she said finally. The hegemony spent thousands of years conquering the weak and killing the strong. But they never met humans. We're not just strong enough to fight them. We're angry enough to hunt them. Admiral Collins straightened in his chair. What are your orders, Madam President? President Carter stood up and looked around the table at the assembled military leaders. Mobilize everything we have. I want every ship armed and ready for combat. I want our best pilots in the interceptor squadrons. And I want the galaxy to learn something new about humans. What's that? General Turner asked. That we don't just fight to defend ourselves, President Carter replied. We fight to protect others. The Cathara called for help, and by God, they're going to get it. even if we have to liberate the entire galaxy to do it. As the council members began making plans for humanity's first interstellar war, one thing became clear to everyone in the room. The age of human isolation was over. Sleeping Giant was fully awake now, and it was very, very angry. 3 weeks after the alien message reached Earth, the Hegemony scout fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Pluto. War Commander Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the readings his sensors provided about this new solar system. Everything appeared normal for a primitive world that had just received its first interstellar communication. Vexthul was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and large black eyes. Like all members of his species, he had evolved on a world with low gravity and mild weather. His people had joined the Hegemony 500 years ago, rather than face extinction. Now they served as officers in the fleet that conquered other worlds. What do the sensors show? Vexthul asked his navigation officer. The third planet shows signs of industrial civilization, the officer replied. Radio transmissions, artificial satellites, and chemical rockets. Their technology level appears to be several centuries behind our own. Vexthul nodded with satisfaction, another easy conquest for the Hegemony. The species that sent the distress signal had made a mistake by transmitting to the system. Now the Hegemony would claim another world and add its population to their slave workforce. Begin standard approach protocol, Vexthul ordered. We will demonstrate our superior firepower, demand surrender, and establish occupation forces. But as the Hegemony ships moved deeper into the solar system, something unexpected happened. A single ship appeared on their sensors, moving at high speed toward their position. It was larger than anything the primitive species should have been able to build. Captain Paul Warren stood on the bridge of the U.S. Vengeance, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around him, his crew prepared for the most important battle in human history. They had volunteered for this mission knowing they might not survive, but also knowing that the fate of Earth depended on their success. Enemy ships detected, reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from her sensor station. 7 vessels, unknown configuration. They matched the descriptions from the alien database. Captain Warren studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were spread out in a formation designed to intimidate rather than fight. They clearly expected an easy victory against primitive opponents. They're about to learn why that's a mistake. Captain Warren said, "All stations report ready for combat." One by one, his department heads confirmed their readiness. The Vengeance had been built specifically to fight alien invaders. Its armor could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Its engines could accelerate at speeds that would crush most galactic species. And its crew had trained for months to fight in ways that no civilized species would consider. War Commander Vexthul watched in confusion as the primitive ship approached, his fleet without transmitting a surrender message. According to Hegemony records, newly contacted species always tried to negotiate when faced with superior technology. "Send a standard warning," Vexthul ordered. "Tell them to surrender immediately, or face destruction." The human response came back in clear galactic standard language. "This is Captain Paul Warren of the United Earthship Vengeance. You have entered our solar system with hostile intent. Surrender now or be destroyed." Vexthul stared at the communication, display in shock. The primitive species was demanding that he surrender. Such arrogance could not be tolerated. "Open fire," Vexthul commanded. "Disable their ship and prepare boarding parties." The Hegemony flagship fired its plasma cannons at the approaching human vessel. The energy beams that could melt through standard galactic armor struck the Vengeance's hull and simply disappeared, absorbed by armor designed to protect against solar radiation and asteroid impacts. "Captain," Warren smiled grimly as his ship shrugged off the alien attack. "Return fire. Target their engines and weapons." The Vengeance's railguns fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speed. The rounds, designed to penetrate asteroid rock, tore through hegemony armor like paper. 2 enemy ships lost power immediately. Drifting helplessly in space. War Commander Vexthul felt fear for the first time in decades. His most powerful weapons had no effect on the human ship, while their weapons destroyed his vessels with single shots. "Retreat to minimum engagement range," he ordered desperately, but Captain Warren had no intention of fighting a long range. Battle. The Vengeance accelerated directly toward the enemy flagship, its engines pushing the ship at speeds that would be impossible for most species to survive. "They're coming straight at us," reported Vexthul's tactical officer. At that speed, collision will destroy both ships. Vexthul could not understand what he was seeing. No rational species would risk mutual destruction in combat. Wars were supposed to be fought by professionals using proper tactics, not by madmen willing to die for victory. The Vengeance passed within a few hundred meters of the hegemony flagship, its weapons firing continuously. The alien ship's shields collapsed under the assault, and its hull began to break apart. Boarding pods away, Captain Warren announced. Commander Rita Bell led the first wave of human Marines as their assault pods attached to the damaged enemy ship. The pods cut through the alien hull like tin cans, and the Marines poured into the hegemony vessel's corridors. The alien crew tried to resist, but they had never faced opponents like humans. Rita Bell moved through the ship's narrow passages with ease, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge enemy fire and return accurate shots. The other Marines followed her lead, advancing steadily toward the bridge. Vexthul watched in horror as his crew fell back from every confrontation with the boarding party. The humans moved faster than his sensors could track, absorbed damage that should have been fatal, and fought with a savagery that no civilized species possessed. Within 2 hours, the entire hegemony scout fleet had been either destroyed or captured. Vexthul found himself in the Vengeance's brig, staring through energy bars at Captain Warren. "Your empire made a mistake," Captain Warren said quietly. "You've spent so long conquering the weak that you forgot strong species might exist." Vexthul's voice shook as he replied, "What do you want from us?" "Information," Captain Warren said. "About every world your people have conquered. About every species you've enslaved. About every innocent civilization you've destroyed." As interrogation, teams began downloading data from the captured hegemony computers. Humanity learned the full scope of the galactic empire they now faced. Thousands of worlds under hegemony control. Millions of enslaved beings. Centuries of systematic oppression and genocide. But they also learned something else. The hegemony had never faced serious resistance because they had never encountered a species like humans. Every previous opponent had been weak, peaceful, and willing to surrender rather than fight to the death. Captain Warren transmitted his battle report back to Earth with a simple conclusion: the galaxy's greatest predators had finally met their match. The age of hegemony dominance was about to end. 6 months had passed since the first battle near Pluto. Earth's shipyards worked day and night, building the largest fleet in human history. Every nation contributed ships, crews, and resources to the war effort. The captured hegemony database had revealed the location of dozens of enslaved worlds, including the Cathara homeworld that had sent the original distress call. Admiral Sarah Mitchell stood on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, humanity's first purpose-built galactic warship. Around her, 300 human vessels prepared for their first major offensive against the hegemony. The fleet represented the combined military might of every nation on Earth, united for the first time in human history. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," announced Commander Roy Adams from his position at the communications station. Admiral Mitchell looked at the tactical display showing her entire fleet. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels stretched across space in perfect formation. Each ship carried volunteers who had left their families behind to fight for the freedom of species they had never met. "Set course for Cathara Prime," Admiral Mitchell ordered. "It's time to keep the promise we made." The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, traveling faster than light toward a world that had been crying for help for over a year. Intelligence reports suggested the hegemony was using Cathara Prime as a slave labor camp, forcing the survivors to strip mine their own planet for valuable resources. 3 days later, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Cathara system. What they found made every crew member angry. The once beautiful world shown in the alien database was now a scarred wasteland. Massive mining operations had carved deep wounds into the planet's surface, and orbital platforms sucked resources from the dying world below. "Enemy fleet detected," reported Lieutenant Carol Price from her sensor station. 200 ships in defensive formation around the planet. Admiral Mitchell studied the enemy positions. The hegemony had clearly been expecting retaliation for their attack on Earth, but their defensive setup showed they still didn't understand how humans fought. "They're protecting their orbital stations," Admiral Mitchell observed. "They think we'll try to capture their facilities intact." Commander Adams looked puzzled. "Aren't we going to try to save the mining equipment?" "No," Admiral Mitchell replied with a cold smile. "We're going to send a message that the galaxy will never forget. All ships, prepare for full assault. Number: prisoners, no mercy, no survivors." The human fleet split into 3 attack groups, each approaching the enemy from a different angle. The hegemony commanders, still thinking in terms of civilized warfare, tried to position their forces to protect their most valuable assets. Captain Tony Garcia commanded the first attack group as it smashed into the hegemony's left flank. His ship, the U.S. Freedom, led the charge directly into the enemy formation. The hegemony vessels fired their plasma weapons, but human armor absorbed the energy without significant damage. "Return fire," Captain Garcia ordered. "Target everything that moves." Human railguns and missile systems tore through the enemy ships with devastating effectiveness. The hegemony vessels, built for efficiency rather than durability, exploded under the focused fire from multiple human ships. Meanwhile, Admiral Mitchell led the main assault force directly toward the planet. The hegemony flagship, a massive vessel called the Dominator, moved to intercept her fleet. "Incoming transmission from the enemy commander," reported Commander Adams. "Put it on screen," Admiral Mitchell ordered. The alien commander appeared on the display, his large black eyes filled with fear and confusion. "I am Fleet Master Kethver of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. Why do you attack us? We can negotiate terms for your withdrawal." Admiral Mitchell stepped forward so the alien could see her clearly. "I am Admiral Sarah Mitchell of the United Earth Defense Force. We are here to liberate this world and punish those who enslaved its people. There will be no negotiation." Fleet Master Kethver's voice rose in panic. "You cannot destroy our entire fleet. The cost in lives would be enormous. Surely we can reach an understanding." "You didn't offer the Cathara an understanding when you burned their cities," Admiral Mitchell replied. "You didn't negotiate when you enslaved their children. Why should we show you mercy you never showed them?" The transmission ended, and the battle resumed with even greater intensity. Human ships pressed their attack with a ferocity that shocked the hegemony forces. Every alien vessel that tried to retreat was hunted down and destroyed. Every orbital platform was reduced to debris. On the planet's surface, Commander Ryan Foster led the liberation force that landed near the largest slave camp. The human Marines moved quickly through the facility, expecting heavy resistance from hegemony guards. Instead, they found something that made them even more determined to win this war. Thousands of Cathara survivors, barely alive after months of forced labor, looked up at their human rescuers with eyes that had forgotten how to hope. "Medical teams to the surface immediately," Commander Foster radioed to the fleet. "We need food, water, and emergency medical supplies for 10,000 survivors. Within hours, human doctors and aid workers were treating the liberated Cathara. The alien survivors had expected their rescuers to be another conquering force, but instead found humans sharing their own food and medicine without asking for anything in return. An elderly Cathara named Veltar approached Commander Foster with tears in his large eyes. "Why do you help us?" he asked in broken Galactic Standard. "What do you gain from our freedom?" Commander Foster knelt down to meet the alien's gaze. "We help because it's right. We fight because others cannot. And we will never stop until every enslaved world is free." Word of the human victory at Cathara Prime spread quickly through secret networks across hegemony space. On dozens of worlds, resistance groups began planning uprisings. For the first time in centuries, enslaved species believed that freedom was possible. The hegemony leadership, safe in their capital world, received reports of the battle with growing alarm. An entire fleet had been destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Their most secure slave world had been liberated. In a matter of hours, that Emperor Zethkal called an emergency session of his war council. "How many ships do these humans have?" he demanded. "Intelligence suggests at least 500 combat vessels," reported his military advisor. "But our sources indicate they are building more ships every day." Emperor Zethkal felt fear creeping into his thoughts. In 1,000 years of hegemony expansion, no enemy had ever fought with such determination. Most species surrendered after losing a single battle, but the humans seemed to grow stronger with each victory. "Mobilize the entire fleet," the Emperor ordered. "Every ship, every world, every resource we have. These Deathworlders must be stopped before they inspire others to rebel." But across the galaxy, it was already too late. The age of hegemony dominance was ending, and the age of liberation had begun. Humanity had proven that even the greatest empire could be challenged by those willing to fight for what was right. 2 years had passed since the first alien message reached Earth. Now, General Amy Clark commanded the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Over 1,000 ships from 20 different species surrounded Dominion Prime, the capital world of the hegemony empire. Humans still led the attack, but they were no longer alone. The Cathara had rebuilt their fleet with human help and technology. The Viridians, freed from slavery 6 months ago, brought their expertise in shield technology. The Zorathi contributed their knowledge of hegemony tactics gained through centuries of oppression. Together, they had come to end the empire that had terrorized the galaxy for over 1,000 years. General Clark stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation, watching the enemy planet grow larger on the main screen. Dominion Prime was a fortress world, protected by energy shields and defended by the largest concentration of hegemony forces in known space. "All Allied fleets report ready for final assault," announced Captain Steve Reynolds from his position at the communications station. General Clark nodded grimly. This would be the hardest battle of the war. The hegemony had pulled back their forces from across the galaxy to defend their capital. Nearly 3,000 enemy ships waited in orbit around the planet, ready to fight to the death. "Signal all ships," General Clark ordered. "Today we end this war. Today we free the galaxy." The massive Allied fleet moved forward, but before they could begin their attack, a transmission came from the planet below. Emperor Drakmar appeared on the screen, his scaled face showing both anger and desperation. "I am Emperor Drakmar, rightful ruler of this galaxy," the alien leader announced. "I offer you terms for peace. Withdraw your fleets, and we will allow you to keep the worlds you have already conquered." General Clark stepped forward so the Emperor could see her clearly. "I am General Amy Clark of the United Earth Defense Force. We didn't come here to conquer your empire. We came here to destroy it." Emperor Drakmar's voice rose in fury. "You cannot defeat us. We have ruled for 1,000 years. Our technology is superior. Our numbers are greater. Your technology failed against Deathworlders, General. Clark replied calmly. Your numbers mean nothing when your soldiers surrender instead of fight. And your 1,000 years of rule end today. The Emperor's image flickered with rage. If you attack this world, I will activate the planetary destruction system. I will destroy Dominion Prime and everyone on it rather than surrender to Primitive. Savages! A cold silence fell over the bridge of the Liberation. Captain Reynolds looked at General Clark with concern. Ma'am, our intelligence suggests he's telling the truth. The planet has nuclear charges placed at strategic points. He could actually destroy the entire world. General Clark studied the tactical display showing the enemy fleet. She had seen this pattern before in human history. Desperate tyrants always threatened to destroy everything rather than lose power. The key was calling their bluff with absolute confidence. All ships, advance to attack positions. General Clark ordered. Emperor Dracomer's voice came through the speakers again, filled with panic. You cannot be serious. Billions will die if you force me to activate the destruction sequence. Then don't activate it, General Clark said simply. Surrender now, and your people live. Continue this war, and take responsibility for whatever happens next. The Allied fleet moved into attack formation, completely ignoring the Emperor's threat. Human ships took the lead, followed by their liberated allies. The Hegemony fleet tried to form defensive lines, but their heart wasn't in the fight. Many of their crews had heard stories about human determination and ferocity in battle. Captain Reynolds watched the enemy positions with growing amazement. Ma'am, several Hegemony ships are breaking formation. They're not engaging our forces. They're learning what humans figured out long ago, General Clark replied. Sometimes the only way to stop a madman is to refuse to be intimidated by his threats. The battle for Dominion Prime began with a massive exchange of fire between the opposing fleets. Human ships pressed forward, absorbing punishment that would have destroyed any other vessels. Their alien allies followed close behind. Inspired by human courage and determination. Commander Bill Hayes led a squadron of destroyers through the enemy lines, targeting the Hegemony's command ships. His vessels moved with precision and speed, striking critical targets and disappearing before the enemy could respond effectively. On the planet's surface, Emperor Dracomer watched his fleet begin to crumble under the Allied assault. His hand hovered over the control that would activate the destruction sequence, but he hesitated. The humans had called his bluff, and now he faced the reality of his choice. My Emperor, called his military advisor, several of our fleet commanders are requesting permission to surrender. Emperor Dracomer stared at the display, showing his forces in retreat. In all his years of rule, he had never faced an enemy that simply refused to be intimidated. The humans fought as if they didn't care about their own survival, only about victory. The final phase of the battle came when Captain Steve Reynolds led a group of assault ships directly toward the planet's surface. Their mission was to capture the Planetary Defense Control Center and prevent the Emperor from carrying out his threat. Human Marines landed in the capital city and fought their way through the streets toward the Imperial Palace. The Hegemony Guards, used to fighting weak species that surrendered easily, found themselves facing opponents who never stopped advancing, never retreated, and never showed fear. Lieutenant John Carter kicked down the door to the Emperor's throne room and found Dracomer still standing beside the destruction controls. The alien ruler looked at the human soldier with eyes full of defeat and confusion. I don't understand your species, Emperor Dracomer said quietly. Why do you fight so hard for beings you never met? What do you gain from freeing slaves you will never see again? Lieutenant Carter lowered his weapon but kept it ready. We fight because someone has to. We free others because freedom is right. And we'll keep doing it until every being in this galaxy has the chance to choose their own path. Within hours, the Hegemony fleet had either surrendered or been destroyed. Emperor Drakmar was taken into custody, and the planetary destruction system was safely deactivated. Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly. The 1,000-year empire was finished. 3 months later, representatives from hundreds of liberated worlds gathered on Cathara Prime to establish the Galactic Liberation Council. Humans were offered leadership of the new government, but they declined, preferring to serve as protectors rather than rulers. Admiral Jake Morrison, promoted from his position at Cerberus Station, stood before the assembled delegates. "The age of empire is over," he announced. "The age of freedom has begun. And wherever tyranny rises again, humans will be there to stop it." As the new galactic government began its work, one truth became clear to every species in known space. The sleeping giant had awakened, and it would never sleep again while others suffered in chains.